Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Noah Baumbach's new romantic comedy drama, Marriage Story. The film stars Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson as a stage director and an actor who are struggling through a coast-to-coast divorce that pushes them to their personal and creative extremes. In addition to Marriage Story, Mr. Baumbach's credits include the feature films The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, Frances Ha, Margot at the Wedding, The Squid and the Whale, and Kicking and Screaming. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Mr. Baumbach spoke with director Ben Stiller about filming Marriage Story. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
All right. I know after I saw the movie, I needed a moment. So, I don't know, it just would be for me, like, after I saw the movie, I was really affected. I have mixed feelings about the film. On the one hand, I feel like it's your most accomplished, emotionally accessible, and well-realized work. And on the other hand, I'm not in it. And I'm just hoping there's no Venn diagram there that, I don't know. It's a beautiful film. And just Thank congratulations
you.
on it.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know where to start with that. I mean, I think, I feel like it's one of those movies where if you've ever been in a relationship of any kind, you can relate to it on some level. If you've ever been in a relationship that hasn't worked, you can relate to it. And there have been a lot of movies that have been made about relationships. So maybe, I guess one of the first things I would ask is, how did you approach it, knowing that this was a subject matter that, was not new? What was your impetus to go and say, okay, I'm going to do this?
Well, I mean, I sort of had an idea that I wanted to find a new way to tell a love story of a kind, and I kind of found it in telling the story of a divorce. I mean, I'd gone through this a bit with The Squid and the Whale, which was on one hand the story of a family going through divorce, but on the other hand was really just, I felt, a story about family and a story about childhood and about that kind of time, that necessary moment whenever it occurs where a child needs to, kind of demystify their parents and move away, find some kind of independence. And in that story and finding it in the kind of crack up of a marriage, it was kind of, in some ways it was a way to make that more evident, a way to make it more dramatic. And in a sense, I found it again in this story, which was, in telling the story of a love story, in a sense, the story of a marriage. I felt like in sort of its undoing, I could focus on it even more. I mean, that was, then I did a lot of research. I started talking to a lot of people about, their experiences with divorce. I mean, it's such a giant subject, as you say, and and there aren't really that many movies about divorce. They're fewer than one might think, but it's such a kind of giant subject, and it happens to so many people and so many families, and I felt like once I started getting into it, I really started to investigate and talk to a lot of people, and it kind of opened up all these avenues for me in the narrative.
And when you it's just always interesting to me, having known you for a while. I'm just curious because you really are someone you're very prolific without being like crazily prolific, or like, in an unhealthy way, where some people just do
prolific. Yeah. That's what they always say about me.
But I really do think you have this, this. I don't know if it's a work ethic or if it's a need to kind of do. You always are working on something. It seems like when you finish editing something, you're working on the next thing. So when you approach this, you have this idea. I'm just curious, like how you begin writing it. What a little bit. It's just interesting to me. We can talk a little bit more about the subject matter, but just your process in terms of how you sit down and start to write something like this.
Well, I think I find I often have ideas, and I think we've probably talked about this with movies we've ended up making, where I have, you can kind of half see the movie. It's like you know this is a movie somewhere, but you can't get there yet, and it doesn't. So often I find there's another movie in front of that, and I let it kind of live while I'm doing other things. And this was one that has lived for quite a while. And so that, practically that finds its way in notes and, little scenelets or ideas for scenes, lines of dialogue, shot ideas. But it is a movie I couldn't have written until I wrote it. And I think after we finished Meyerowitz and we were there was some point I think in the when we were promoting it, I think it just sort of arrived. It found its way, and it was something I just started writing in earnest, and that's when I kind of seized it and started to talk to a lot of people and and go with it. But I couldn't have written it 6 months earlier. It's just that sort of thing. I mean, although as you say this, I have nothing on the docket now. I suddenly.
This is it.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, I think I kind of, which I think maybe is healthy in a different way. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So, but the way you approach is you start writing. You start writing. You don't really. I mean, not to have to expose your whole creative process.
Just let's do it.
But these are people who are involved in making films, but I'm just curious. You when you write, you don't really. You kind of just begin and you kind of go with it.
I mean, it's different for different things, but and often I bring in the actors as well. I mean, I'll have sort of like a spill of stuff, and it's often in a lot of different notebooks, and some's on the computer, and some's in notebook written by hand, and often when I'm writing by hand, I'm kind of end up writing the same. I find myself writing the same idea over and over again, but slightly differently. Like I'll keep thinking it's a new idea, and then I'll look. I mean, it's a little like The Shining when you're like, it's like I look back and I'm like, I've just been writing the same thing, but it somehow I'm developing some thought. There's because sometimes something's interesting or feels like a movie, but you don't know why, and so you don't know what to do with it, but you keep returning to it. I mean, even or shot ideas. I mean, even an early point, one of the second shot in the movie is Scarlett coming out of the subway, and I've always wanted to do that visually, that thing that we all do all the time. I mean, of sort of coming out of the earth, into New York City or to Brooklyn, it's something I've done so many times in my life, and then like one day I was like, "What? That's such a thing. It's that arising out thing. It's so kind of beautiful, and so there are those things that find their way in. Then, but what I've also started doing more in recent years, I mean, really, I think since our collaboration started on Greenberg, is bringing the actors in and thinking about the actors while I'm writing. That was very much while we're young and Meyerowitz for us. And on this movie, I brought Adam Driver and Laura Dern, who Adam this is our fourth movie together. Laura I knew well, but had never worked together. And then Scarlett I knew a little bit, and I approached her. And I think I found it very much true for us, but I find more and more having the actors involved, even just so I can picture them and write scenes thinking of them, I find is a great kind of guide for me when I'm working, as well as a resource to reach out to you at any point.
Right. In watching the movie, I feel like all of your movies have this sort of great sort of balance of, humor and drama or whatever. It's kind of just like real. But, when you think about something that's funny in one of these movies, or in this movie in particular, I think there are moments that are really, really funny, but they're sort of in very, tough situations. Do you think about that at all in terms of like, I should have? Are you thinking about the laughs ever at all?
Not really. I kind of often am aware. I'm aware of these sort of tones, or I don't know what to call them exactly, but living often side by side within a scene. I don't write jokes or things that are funny to try to lighten an otherwise serious scene, or vice versa. I don't try to kind of think, we're getting too funny here or something. But I'm aware of it on some level. It's just kind of a balance that often feels right to me. There are lines that like when Bert Spitz says, if I were representing you, like that's a line when I wrote it, I thought that's pretty funny. But again, then you have, when we're shooting it, it's Alan and it's Adam, and Alan does it in such an unconscious way, and Adam is so there and like you are representing me, like he's so, it's like, it's such a, and then Alan's like, no, of course, like, and it's and in the playing of it, it's so, there's so much desperation and sadness in it too, and that's the only way a line like that can live in a movie. Like I feel like in the movie, it is in that context. No, I don't think about it.
Well, no, I think though that's like a good example though of like the humor is kind of part of, it's not there to be funny, it's there just to be in service to the story because of the irony of that moment. And I feel like as a filmmaker, over the course of all your movies, I think you've always you have a very distinctive voice, and I think you've never worried about having to make sure that it works for a broad audience or to make everybody happy. Is that fair to say? Or to have to please an audience?
I want the audience to be there with me. I never would do anything that I thought was going to actually alienate the audience. At all. But I guess I've done things if I felt they felt right or true that I hope the audience will be there with the movie.
Right, because it's interesting to me because in this film I feel like there is, and I was joking about it earlier, but an accessibility to this film that maybe for some audiences they didn't have before for your films, where you would say like this maybe not that they were in any way less or that this is any more uncompromising, but there's a certain I think I felt there's like a certain heart in the film where you wanted to tell this story, which was a very difficult, painful story, but at the end of the story, you wanted the audience to maybe feel something that was hopeful, and maybe that's presumptuous. I don't know.
Well, I felt that the story was that inherently and needed to be that. And that goes to sort of it being a love story, and that I wanted it to, there's this sort of feeling that love exists in every scene. I think it was something I thought about the whole way. It was like that, and it's something that Adam and Scarlett, without ever doing anything, but it was always there, is that no matter how contentious, you feel love, and you feel the potential for happiness is always there. It's just, sometimes it's out of reach. It's like the space in Los Angeles, and you're in these conference rooms and you see all that landscape, and it's there, but it's like a painting. It's gone. You can't get to it until the last shot, in a sense. You get to it, and it sort of went into that dissolve that between them after they signed their that thing. I felt like they're never quite there at the same time anymore, and the feeling of trying to grab it, and that inherently is, it's moving, and I felt, and so it was really the story that dictated it for me. I wasn't consciously thinking, I want this to be more accessible than the previous movie or not. I mean, Greenberg, which we made, was so much about loneliness.
Much more accessible. Accessible. I felt.
Well, it was about loneliness and about, and about a very particular person at a very particular time, and that's what I love about that movie. But I don't think of them in contrast to each other in that way.
I was just thinking that as a storyteller, I felt like there was a real, very conscious responsibility. I think that I felt like well taken care of as an audience watching the movie, that you were telling this story in a very real way and not in any way manipulating our emotions, but also wanting to take us somewhere.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I feel like that you have a real responsibility. It's like with material like this, it's not unlike, an action movie where you feel, sometimes you're watching, something, or a horror movie where you feel like you feel in great hands. You feel scared. You might feel like anything can happen at any point, but you love that feeling because you know that on some level, the person who made the movie is taking care of you. And then we've all seen the ones where you feel like, I don't like this feeling because I don't feel like they're taking care of me. And I definitely felt that as a filmmaker. That was of extreme importance.
What do you think of Marvel movies? I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm not. I want to talk a little bit, and then I'll open it up for a couple of questions, but I just want to talk about a couple of moments to me that were just very, very special. The actors, I think, are all just doing amazing work. And there's a couple of moments, like the moment when Adam sings the song, when he sings the Sondheim song, right? Yeah. Where did that? It's so unexpected. It's so to me, it's like just this kind of revelatory moment of humanness that in no way could ever be, come out of some sort of a studio script notes meaning. Like, and then he should definitely sing the Sondheim song there. And sing the whole song, and it's so amazing. How did that happen?
Well, it had come. I mean, initially it came from the fact that Adam and I talked about Company a few years ago, that how much we liked it, and we loved the musical. We even talked at times about, is there like a film version of Company that could be done, and in doing that, we were both listening to the soundtrack a lot, and I was watching versions on YouTube, the Pennebaker documentary, which is amazing, and I thought at some point, I just love to have Adam sing Being Alive in anything. And I, there's part of me that feels like if it wasn't this movie, it would be the next one. Or I just keep kicking that idea down the line until I could rationalize it in a movie.
Did you know he could sing?
Yeah.
Right.
And he sang for me. It's uncomfortable when you're sitting together and you're like, well, can you sing a little or something? But he did. But I wanted it to have the same effect that it has, that songs have in musicals, which is that, the best musicals where that it's not just entertainment, it's actually story and character. And so that when the character's at a different place at the end of the song than when they started. And I felt like, could that be possible in this movie? And there were the material offered a lot of opportunity genre-wise. There are a lot of kind of embedded genres in this movie, and some like thriller and courtroom procedural. There's a screwball comedy vibe to it. There's love story, horror, and we found a musical too. But we shot it at Knickerbocker downtown and on University, and it was kind of, it was a great thing to shoot because it's all one shot also, and the only time that the camera moves unmotivated by any kind of physical action, it does twice. It's in Scarlett's monologue in Nora's office when she's going, and I feel like it's a kind of internal momentum. It's somebody once said to me that you can't leave like talking about relationships, you can't leave without momentum. And I felt like, in a sense, that monologue was the momentum she needed. She had it already, but it was kind of like a getting to a new place, and it's like internal. And I felt like the rules could break because of that. The film rules. That we could move in on her. And likewise, when Adam sings, something's changing in him, and we can move. The camera has to move. It can't hold back anymore. And I love that in movies. I love that as a director, is like sort of remaining open to sort of when things can change. Like the rules that you have, like, you have your kind of, whether you call them rules or guidelines or just sort of intuitive, like how you want to shoot your movie. But when something happens that gives you permission to do something else, and in a sense, the song itself is finding permission. It's like the character gives us permission. And I felt like then our job as the camera and as the cinema, as the audience, is to come and follow and to move in towards him.
Yeah, I'd say as a filmmaker, I feel there are very few writer-directors who embrace both aspects of it equally. And I feel like for you as a filmmaker, I think there might be some filmmakers who write so that they can direct their film or collaborate with another writer to be able to get to the point where they can make the film, because that's where they're most, they feel most confident maybe. For you, do you separate the writing and the directing, or how do you look at the first draft of the script and the final cut of a movie as just different parts of the same process?
That I see them as part of the same process. No matter what a script is, I don't really find much satisfaction in just a script. I feel like they are blueprints. I work very hard on them. I want them to be as thorough as I can make them. I work with my editor, Jen Lame. I work with her on the script the way we'll ultimately work on the final movie, because I feel like we might as well cut the script first, so that the script is in some ways, like a cut film before we shoot the movie.
So you'll show her a draft of the script.
Yeah, and we'll talk it all through, and then I really, Mike Nichols had the thing he said that every director needs a buddy, which I think is a great. He was an interpretive director, brilliant, but he, I think from his perspective is always looking, well, who's the buddy on this, but when you're a writer director, the writer can't be your buddy, so you look for a buddy, and Jen's been, and I, there are more than one buddy, can be more than one. I mean, we've been buddies.
Thank you.
We're still buddies in life.
Good.
And in future movies.
Yay.
And Adam, and I mean the cast is that way, but in a way it's, you want to let the cast, even in the closest collaborations, I feel like you want to let the cast have their world too, and not, that you do by necessity. A director needs to kind of, that there's some barrier there some of the time, because they have to live in those moments. I mean, you have to let them, give them as much structure as I feel is necessary, and then so that they can let go. And you can't be you need to be watching. You can't always be there. You can't. You watch some of these scenes. I can't rush in and say, "What did you think?" You're there for them. So I found, Jen is often that for me. A very important collaboration.
Okay, do we have time we have to wrap it up? One question? 5 minutes, okay. Yes, go ahead. The question was, could Noah talk about the fight sequence when they fight and he ends up saying, "I wish you were dead"?
It's all scripted, and the whole movie is scripted. I mean, it's and Ben can speak to this.
It's all scripted. Down to the does and uhs, and it's all very specific.
But I find having, again, this sort of to what I was saying, I think having real structure. I mean, we rehearsed everything, but that scene in particular, we rehearsed, First, the rehearsals start in just chairs in a rehearsal space, and it's really like getting the language, because like all the overlaps are scripted. Everything is sort of, it's a kind of musicality in a way, and so getting them comfortable and familiar with everything, and they know it now. I want them to know it by heart when we're rehearsing, so they're already there. They have the language, and then we rehearse in the space. It was, you wouldn't think it'd be so hard to find a crappy apartment in Hollywood to shoot in, but to the specifications that I wanted, it was difficult, because I knew we wanted a lot of movement in there. I like what I found, which is what I was looking for, was also the kitchen and the living room. It's almost like a split screen. I felt like I was thinking of our friend Brian De Palma's, like, how he would often do a split screen. And it goes with a lot of the locations are kind of play on this sense of performance. They're theater people. Their home in Brooklyn has that kind of archway proscenium when they come in. The serving of the papers is all the ins and outs and the doors and things. It's like kind of like noises off or something, and then of course the irony in the movie is that the lawyers become the performers and they lose their voices. And so it was also very important where that scene fell in the movie, because it comes right after the courtroom, where I felt like they've been totally stripped of their voices. The lawyers have taken over, they've distorted, they've turned all these things into argument, into verbiage. It's all about dividing. And I saw that scene, I mean, many things about that scene, but I saw that scene as a sort of about them finding their voices again. or trying to, but they don't. They don't have they don't have the means to communicate anymore. I mean, it's like it's almost like children learning to speak or to communicate again. And so what we did is we blocked it extensively, and everything in it. Everything was blocked, but with their collaboration. The actors need to find, right, Ben? The actors need to find their way into it as well. But what I discovered in that too is that in a way the blocking kind of mirrored their relationship during the movie, which is she's trying to get him, she's there from the beginning. I mean, her story is the story of her finding a voice, of building herself up. He's always catching up throughout the movie, which is also why I think the Sondheim song has, besides his, brilliant performance, is why it has the meaning it does. And his is the process of breaking down. And so he's moving away, she's coming after him. That helped us motivate a lot of the movement in that sequence. So it's when he finally is pushed to come forward, and you see the cost to him and what he's been fighting. He's been hiding. There's good reason he hasn't wanted to do that, because he's hiding he's been defending himself from so much pain. And so that helped us kind of block it out. And then even the close-ups, when we get into these there's sort of three sets of close-ups, sort of medium close-up, a slightly closer, and then their faces kind of take over the screen. We had the cut points of those in advance. I knew exactly where we would cut. So I would have them turn, like I would say, could you say the line here and then come forward? Or could you, so that the movement and the line would be the cut point of every piece there. So you have these actors, I'm giving them very sort of structured thing. Then the idea is that I find it gives them the freedom to go and be in the moment, because they don't have to, they're not carrying any of this burden of anything else except just being in the scene. And, they're so, they do, what they do is so personal in this movie. It was the hardest thing I've had to shoot as a director, because it was hard not to get emotionally involved myself shooting it. But also the most gratifying, because of what they were doing. It felt so personal to them. I felt in a way I was watching their movie a lot of the time.
Do one more, maybe? Question is about the aspect ratio the film was shot in, how rare it is to be shot in Academy aspect ratio.
It wasn't actually Academy, which would be 133. This was 166, somewhere between Academy and 185. It was something that Robbie Ryan, the cinematographer, who shot Meyerowitz with us as well, what we came up with in tests, we did a lot of tests. It's also shot on 35 millimeter. Because we knew we wanted a lot of close-ups. Another sort of aspect of the story is this sort of internal-external, which you see in the locations and the sort of New York, LA, the sort of interior versus the exterior, and but also the internal life of the characters and the external situation they find themselves in. And I knew there was going to be a lot of close-ups. And 166, I find, really frames the faces beautifully. We looked at Persona, the Bergman movie, a lot, which is not actually shot on 166. I think it's like 178 or something. But it's because of the way he shoots faces in that movie, and also people in relationship to each other. The two women in relationship to each other, the sort of overlapping of faces, the way bodies are in a room. And then also when we do go wide, that suddenly has meaning, because, it's that same thing. There are a lot of long takes in the movie too, because I find then the cut suddenly, sort of going to those close-ups, the cuts suddenly have different impact. That if you're cutting all the time, a cut doesn't mean anything anymore. But or it's just, you don't think about it. But when you're doing, something that's sort of in one for a long time, the cut suddenly, I always think of Vertigo when Jimmy Stewart is early on in the movie, he's trying to prove that he doesn't really have a problem with it, and he's getting up on the step stool and he's going, up and down, and Midge is there, and he's looking, but then he looks out the window of the apartment he's in and looks down, and he suddenly gets it, and it goes to the close-up, and you're just like, holy, it's really stunning. And I always think about that, of like saving the close-up for the right moment. And I've often not done a lot of close-ups in my movies because, for like Greenberg, the whole thing was to keep him in the environment always. You always wanted to see the environment. I always felt seeing the environment put his kind of solipsism into perspective. Because you see this little guy in this world that doesn't care a damn about what he's going through. And here, I felt it was different. It's like, we really care. We need, sort of to what you were saying earlier, it's like, and this is in the music in the movie and everything, I felt like it's our duty to care for these people. They're trying really hard, and, and they're imperfect, and they're making mistakes, and but they are trying hard, and they want it to be good parents. And I feel like, again, this was our responsibility, was to be there with them and give them their give them their chance. And so that was sort of all, sort of built into these sort of notions of how we shot these scenes. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have to stop now. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more great Q&As with directors Todd Haynes and Jay Roach. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.